Earlier in the month, I had shared in a vlog a moment of me just opening up about feeling like I was in a period of being mentally exhausted, self-critical. I felt like I was in a rut, just not operating at my best self. And when I shared that conversation, I wasn't necessarily expecting a negative response, but I definitely was surprised by how many of you resonated with it. And as a result, I felt really inspired to film today's video, which is when we are in those I'm in a rut places, how do we navigate out of them? So I'm going to share the tips, the thought processes that have really helped me, and hopefully it can provide you with at least one tool to add to your wellness tool belt. Oh, that's a good phrase, wellness tool belt. If you're not already, hit subscribe. I do lots of video on self-care, self-improvement, organization, planning, food, books. I don't know. I do things. So join if you want, I guess. That's a horrible promo. Let's dive in. When I'm in a rut, I'm very aware that I am not myself. And over a prolonged period of time, that frustration over the fact that I know, hey, this isn't me, it builds. And it usually builds to the point where I'm directing that frustration to me in the form of blame. Like, how could I let myself get to this place? Why can't I snap out of it? Why am I allowing myself to be unmotivated? And it's just, it adds fuel to the fire, I guess is what I'm trying to say. So what I've come to realize is that before I can even start asking myself, how am I gonna switch these emotions? I have to just forgive myself for having a human moment. They happen, it's part of the human experience. But when I'm in a down period, it feels isolating. That is especially the case with the fact that we have social media highlight reels on our phones where we can just scroll endlessly and be shown pictures and videos of people just being so happy and positive and going through this accomplishment, and it just kind of makes you feel more and more isolated. So I've had to remind myself times like, Caitlin, you are not that special, which sounds kind of harsh, but I mean it in the sense that I'm not special enough that I'm the only one that has had to overcome a lull or go through a little bit of a unmotivated session. Like, this is so normal. And to start telling yourself this other narrative that like, oh, poor me, I'm the only one, then you're really gonna waste a lot of energy and pull yourself deeper into it. Energy that could be better used switching things up. Forgive yourself for being in a rut and recognize that you're not special. That's my advice. Moving on. Unmotivation is by far the most overwhelming feeling I experience when I'm in a down period, and I feel like the best counter to those emotions is to tap into my inner child. If you've ever spent time around a baby or a toddler or just like a small human, you can look at them and just see them like absolutely excited and fascinated by the most mundane things. Like, that's one of the reasons why I love being around kids so much, is that they remind you of how really the most inconsequential things are remarkable. Like even the fact that you and I are sharing this moment, I'm in Toronto, you're wherever you are in the world, and through technology we're able to have like this moment together, is crazy when you really think about it. And unfortunately, I think we just naturally suppress that fascination as we get older and have responsibilities and have to-do lists and have careers. But I'm a firm believer in keeping that inner kid in me alive all the time by appreciating the little things. But especially when I'm unmotivated, I go straight to, okay, what's something new that I can try here to get back that like excitement, that rush, that curiosity about the world, because sometimes you just need that boost. A few weeks ago, I had been making pancakes, and instead of just making regular pancakes, I actually put the batter into this new squeeze tube that I had laying around in my cupboard for months. And I made pancake art, and I was on FaceTime with a friend of mine, and I was just like having the best time making like random shapes. I documented it on Instagram. An example of how you can even just look at normal tasks, the most normal task, just making pancakes and finding a way to spice it up and make it something more thrilling. Over the last few months, I've also become more deeply interested in the investing space, in learning about different investment vehicles like the stock market, like real estate, RRSP accounts and TFSAs, buying a home and all these things. And although that doesn't sound as childlike as pancake art, it's something new. I'm being fascinated. It's opening my eyes to a different way of doing things, and it's just fun. There's just a lot of power in learning something new, and something I think is a good thing to embrace at all moments, but really helpful to double down in during periods where you need that spark. We all have routines. I have routines. I love a good routine. Nothing wrong with that. But when we get in the habit of just doing the same things all the time, never changing things up, how can we not expect ourselves to get bored, right? If something's not working for you, then change it, or at least change it temporarily. It doesn't even have to be like a permanent change. Small example is I work in my office every day, and I have a beautiful work setup, great desk, great lighting. All of my supplies are in arm's reach. But some days I walk into that office and I'm like, I can't work here today. Like, I have no interest in working here. So I'll work on my kitchen island or on my living room floor, at a coffee shop in a non-pandemic year, outside during nice weather, whatever it is. But that switch up of scenery can have a huge impact. If you've been wearing a lot of sweats or casual clothing lately, which I know a lot of us have, understandably, then take a day to put on a full outfit, get glammed. If you're in the habit of watching TV every night after dinner, read a book instead, or do a Sudoku puzzle or play a video game. I don't know. Just do something different. Variety is the spice to life. That just adds a lot of good flavor. I hated that I did that. Ugh. This might sound a little odd, but I feel like cooking a meal or baking something can have such a huge impact on boosting your mood. One, when you're in a rut, you can feel down by the fact that you're not accomplishing something, and cooking a meal or baking a recipe can be a non-commitment heavy thing that you can do to feel productive. Like, if you go through the art of following a recipe and turning nothing, which is just not something you can eat, into something that you can eat, like, you'll feel like some pride over that. I know I feel that way, especially when I do things like make my own pizza dough. Like, when I make my own pizza dough from scratch, I really feel like I did something. Even though all I did was make a really basic pizza dough recipe, I'm like, no, but I made pizza dough. So watch out. And two, cooking or baking is a very tactile activity. You gotta use your hands for it. And it kind of has this magical way of bringing in your focus to the present. When I'm chopping an onion, like, I can't think too much about my problems. I'm more focused right now on the fact that I'm suppressing tears and making sure that I end up with 10 fingers at the end of this chopping session. So it prevents the spiral, or it gives you a pause from the spiral that can happen. And then, of course, you get the added bonus of eating something. So a lot of wins happening with this tip. I've mentioned on the channel before how I've been really committing myself to moving my body more this year. And what I have been learning on this journey is that I do not like working out. I think that whole, oh my goodness, working out feels so good. I'm not that person. I'm just not. I love how I feel right after the workout when they tell me I can stop, but I do not like the during. However, because I don't like the during, because it's hard and like my muscles are screaming at me, it just stops the noise. It's like a nice moment of solace for the mind, even if my mind is freaking out over the fact that I am putting my body into positions that it doesn't want to do. You'll hear people say a lot too when you're not feeling great, is like, go take a walk, you'll feel better. And before filming this video, I really wanted to think about, well, walks do make me feel better. I feel really great after I take a walk, and I use that as a tool for myself. But if someone were to ask me, why does it make me feel better? I don't want to just say, Oh, because I'm getting fresh air. So I thought about this, and I think it comes down to two things. When I take a walk around the city, I get a real sense of comfort from the fact that there is more happening in the world than just what's happening in my own life. There are cars going in different directions, people walking to different places, people on the phone having conversations with a coworker, a loved one, some people walking in groups, some people holding bags from stores that they just went to. You're reminded again of like that point that I mentioned earlier. You're not special. There's other things happening around you. Not to say that your problems or your struggles are irrelevant. That's not, I don't want to like discredit our emotions, but perspective is important. And kind of a side note to that point is that we're all main characters of our own story, but like when I'm walking around the city, I realize, or I'm reminded of the fact that I also play the side character in my friends and my loved ones' stories. I play an extra background in a stranger that I'm passing on the street, their story. And I think that's important to keep in mind because I think we often evaluate our value based on the things that we've achieved for ourselves and not taking into consideration the impact we may have had on others around us, whether it's through complimenting a stranger or listening to a friend or helping a family member out, having like a kind exchange with your cashier when you're checking out. And those things are not inconsequential. Like that should definitely be something we give a little bit more weight to when we're thinking about our sense of self, what we got accomplished that day. Like if you did something kind for someone else, like that in itself is a huge thing. Just because you can't add it to your resume doesn't mean it's not something you shouldn't recognize as a special part about you. When you start to find yourself getting out of a rut, it's super easy to just kind of ignore the fact that that happened. You're like, I don't click with that person anymore. Don't feel as emotional as that person did. I'm just going to focus on this good feeling that I'm feeling right now. I do think there is a great importance in processing your whys and figuring out like what sparked that, because yes, they're normal. It's normal to have ups and downs, but if there's a root cause for it, by ignoring it and just moving on, it more likely than not is going to affect you again in the future. And you don't want to have like repeat ruts, right, for the same thing. That would be really exhausting. Figuring out the why is important because if you know the why, then you can be intentional about making a change. Like if it's something related to work that you're not happy with, what can you do to change about that? If you find that it was social media that kind of sparked you feeling like crap, then maybe you got to audit the people that you're following and make your feed a more empowering place. One of my ruts in the past year sparked me getting firmer on my work boundaries and really prioritizing at least one day a week with no work, but ideally like a two-day weekend. I've even booked off vacation time for 2021, which I have never done. So I know that sounds like a weird concept to be excited about because everyone books off vacation time from work, but this girl has not. So it's gonna be good. It's gonna be good. I'm a little nervous about it, but I'm excited. And sometimes figuring out the why isn't so simple, and you need to talk to someone else about it, whether it's a professional, whether it's a friend, a loved one, a confidant, a few confidants, to just kind of work through it. I rely heavily on some people in my life to get me through certain seasons, and there's no shame in asking for help. Like we all can't be expected to do it all the time. I think the most important takeaways for me though when I'm in a rut is to remind myself to be kind and to remind myself that this feeling is temporary. Really any emotion is temporary, whether it's joy, happiness, fear, anxiety, stress. Life ebbs, it flows. Especially when you're in a down period, it's easy to feel like that is, for some reason, like we really think during those periods that they are just going to be forever, but that's just not the case. And especially if you're taking the time to figure out your why for your rut, then that experience can end up transforming into something really positive because it could have enacted a change in your life that you wouldn't have done if not for going through that period of downness. As I typically like to do, I'm going to turn the tables back to you and ask, what is a tip, what is a piece of advice you'd give to someone if they were going through a rut? I know we all experience emotions differently, so I think there's a lot of value in hearing from different perspectives. So if you could contribute to the conversation, I would really appreciate it, both selfishly for myself and also just for all the viewers that like to go read through that section. I think the only appropriate way to end this video is with like a nice virtual hug and some good vibes being sent your way. I will see you all very soon with a new video, and until then, bye everyone.
So you live in the dream, you should see it through someone else's side. Another cipher to break,